Yeah.
FBI, you want to eliminate the FBI?
FBI, CDC, IRS, ATF, Department of Education, and we're just getting warmed up.
Ukraine, end it or let
End it. This is the moment where we, the people, say we can handle the truth about what happened with the origin of COVID-19, the truth about government censorship via tech companies to do it, the truth about the Hunter Biden laptop and the bribe from Ukraine and from China, the truth about Jeffrey Epstein.
Would you exonerate Trump? Well, hey, massive respect, man. I'm a big fan.
Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, really, really, like you inspire me tremendously to become, to reach for my full potential. Let me give you a proper introduction. American business leader, New York Times bestselling author, founder, CEO of a company that developed, 5 drugs, Vivek?
Yeah, 5 are FDA approved, yep.
Yeah, in 2022, you founded a company called Strive, which is a equity asset management company. You compete with BlackRock and State Street and Vanguard. Just competing with giants like that had to get you ready for this thing that you're competing with now. Harvard Law School graduate and 2024 Republican nominee for President of the United States of America. Phenomenal, man.
I appreciate that, brother. Thank you. You're able to see me too, by the way. I can see you.
Perfect.
All right,
perfect.
man. So I'm excited to talk to you. I've been excited to get right into it. So you tell me, and we'll go where you want.
Spaces is open for at the end of this. We'll do some Q&A with those guys. But
yep.
Look, you're emerging as a 2024 GOP star. Like nobody was paying attention to you. Just 90 days ago? Am I right to say that?
Yeah, it's fair to say. Very fair.
So what happened, dude? What clicked? And so, you working with your group. I just asked my staff. I said, how easy were they to work with to arrange this? And Annie said, well, what do you mean? I said, no, compared to the other groups that we've worked with. And she said, you guys were so pleasant to work with.
I appreciate that. We try to pick people who don't take themselves too seriously. My guy here, Brandon, he sometimes on the campaign trail wear a hat, says this is my first rodeo. And we're all pretty open about that. It's my first rodeo in politics too.
Yeah.
And that's the spirit we're embracing. So look, I'm going to be really honest with you. I don't believe in boasting, but I also don't believe in false humility either. I was pretty confident when we started this campaign that the message was really going to take off. The rest of the world seemed very skeptical of it. And my experience for that was traveling the country over the last 3 years, speaking the truth. I mean, that's what Woke Inc., my book, was all about. That is what, Nation of Victims, Capitalist Punishment. I've written 3 books in the last 2 years, been to a majority of states in this country. And I didn't expect to run for president. I started thinking about it when people would come up to me at the end of those events and demand that I consider it. Say, hey, listen, I really need you to think about running for president in 2024. And if a number of people who you don't know, you're in different states across the country, tell you that, it's hard to shake off. And if it weren't for that, I wouldn't have taken this idea seriously. So I think what's resonating with people, I think it is the fact that I really am not attached to a particular result here. My goal is to speak the truth at every step, and I would rather lose the election than to veer from my beliefs. But I think that it turns out that might just be the winning political strategy, actually. And, you have a lot of people in politics who end up becoming super PAC puppets. And I don't say that disparagingly against them. It's just how the system works.
So what does that mean? What is a super PAC? Because I don't know the game here.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a term that you'll hear in politics either. It's kind of one that I made up, but it kind of describes what's going on, which is there's a mega donor class that determines who should and shouldn't run. They're the gatekeepers, typically even who gets in the race. You take a tin can, hat in hand, ask for permission to run. That comes with strings attached with what you can say on the hard issues. On the easy stuff, everybody's pretty aligned, who can have a pissing contest on who says the most anti-woke thing they can say. In a Republican primary, that's par for course, and that's fine. And I wrote the book on wokeness, right? I wrote Woke Inc., and so I share most of these convictions that others have adopted. But on the hard issues, right, in terms of how do we actually end a war in Ukraine that we should not be in, which becomes a no-win war, that we're on track to create another Vietnam, or the truth about what happened on January 6th, about bank bailouts, about getting to the heart of what we will do as a nation to move forward beyond a politicized persecution of a former president of the United States that happens to be running against people like me in this race. That's complicated. We got to roll up our sleeves on the climate cult, on electric vehicle subsidies. I mean, let's get to the tough stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that that's one where other candidates have a hard time if there are consequences, if they're beholden to somebody else, and I'm not. And I think that's something that's competitive advantage for me.
You're saying because they're connected to the super PAC, they can't hit the Ukraine issue, the January 6th, the bank bailouts, the persecution.
Yeah, if you're dependent on mega donors for your buttering your bread, you're restrained in what you can say. It's just a fact.
So I didn't plan on talking to you about that because I don't really know about it, but these interviews are always for my curiosity. Who are the mega donors?
Well, there's about, maybe 100 people, roughly speaking, maybe a couple hundred people in the Republican Party, and there's their counterparts in the Democratic Party, and sometimes they overlap between the two parties. And my view was they can come along if they want, absolutely, like any citizen in this journey. But I am going to speak the truth at every step, and I'd rather invest my own money rather than begging somebody else for theirs first to get this campaign off the ground. And so I put over $15 million of my hard-earned money into this campaign already.
15?
And then over 15 actually already. And then I've had a group of small dollar donors that have lifted us up. We have about 70,000 small dollar donors.
Wow, congratulations.
The threshold for the first Republican debate's 40,000. We're already past 70,000 and growing. Wow. And the beautiful part about this is 40% of them are first time ever donors to a Republican in any kind.
Wow.
So it says we're bringing new people in. That tells me we can actually deliver a landslide election because, I think there are other people. I know you're not supposed to say this, but I absolutely think Donald Trump or other Republican candidates can beat Joe Biden in a general election, in a narrow, 50.1 style election. You do the math, I think it's possible. But I think I'm the only candidate who can actually deliver a landslide in 2024 like Ronald Reagan did in 1980. And we see it in the data. I mean, the difference is young people.
Yeah.
40% of our donors, many of them are young people coming along that never would have come with the Republican Party. I personally think this has to be a landslide election. We need a moral mandate to revive our missing national identity, to shut down the administrative state, to do the kinds of things I want to get done. That's going to require a moral mandate. But, I think that it's being unconstrained is, I think, a big competitive advantage. And, the other people are on TV ads in Iowa and New Hampshire more than I am right now, because that's what having giant super PACs behind you can buy you early in the race.
Yeah. So Vivek, let's just talk about money for a second. How do small donors help you right now? Like somebody's listening to this right now, you've already resonated with them and they want to go send 50 or $100
or $1 fine too. That helps us build a movement. It's a snowball effect. It also is, helping criteria for the debate stage, subjective criteria for how we're placed on that stage. So honestly, people go to Vivek2024.com. $100 would be great. A dollar is perfectly acceptable too. That
Vivek
helps us build a.
Give me the website again.
Yep, Vivek2024.com. So VIVEK 2024.com. Yeah.
Okay. Andy, go there right now and put $100 in right now.
I appreciate that, brother.
We'll get everybody going. Yeah,
I appreciate that
because look,
that's grassroots. That's what we want.
Exactly, and this is everybody is going on the internet right now. You guys see information, but if you never do anything like what I just did, you're not going to run for president. I don't know how small the number is, but it's you got a better chance of winning the lottery than running for president of the United States. You guys, it's very easy for you guys to throw $100 in or $50 in or 25 and support this man, regardless of where you're at. Support somebody. How important is that the people get involved in this cycle?
Critical. I think that I understand all the reasons why people want to be disengaged, right? I mean, we have a broken system. We're riding broken rails, the electoral system and otherwise. But that's why we need a freight train. I think that's why 2024 has to be a landslide. This cannot be small margin. I was having a conversation earlier today, actually, and I want to put an optimistic note on this, right? We live in a moment where we are repeatedly lied to. And I think this is the moment where we, the people, say we can handle the truth. You ever watch that movie, A Few Good Men? Yeah. You can handle the truth. That's Jack Nicholson. No. Jack Nicholson represents the Joe Biden view, the Anthony Fauci view, right? We have to tell a noble lie. You need me on that wall, is what he says. No, we don't need you on that wall. And yes, we can handle the truth about what happened with the origin of COVID-19. the truth about what happened on January 6th, the truth about government censorship via tech companies to do it, the truth about the Hunter Biden laptop and the bribe from Ukraine and from China, the truth about Jeffrey Epstein, the truth about the Nashville shooter, you name it. Publish that manifesto. I'm going to Nashville tomorrow to call for the police to release that manifesto. We can handle the truth. And that's in part what the American Revolution was about. And so the positive view of this is we live in a unique moment, right? There are rare moments in human history. I think we live in a 1775 moment. That's what I think 2023 is. It's a 1775 moment where there's electricity in the air, and all the reasons we have to be despondent. The answer is no, you don't hide from the electricity in the air. You go outside, you catch it, you do something with it. And I think that's the choice in this Republican primary. Do you want incremental reform working within the system we have? Do you want incremental reform, or do you want revolution? And I stand on the side of revolution, the American Revolution, and we are blessed to live in moments such as these. And if we wake up to that and say, no, we're not just going to disengage, go into our clamshell and hide, but no, we are about to actually rise up as a people for the good, for the ideals that make us American in a good way, in a way that engages in the not only the electoral process, but exercising our voice as citizens. Boy, is that an opportunity that we have. And I think that's the moment we live in.
So you said something about donations even control or manage or decide where you're at on a stage during a debate?
Yeah, I mean, I think that so they haven't been super clear about all the criteria that go in, but you have to hit minimum donor thresholds of 40,000 for the first, 50,000 for the second, 60,000 for the third. The good news is at this point, I mean, criteria like that are designed to keep, newcomers and outsiders out. I'm an outsider, but we've shattered it. And even I think former professional politicians and vice presidents, et cetera, haven't hit it yet. So I'm good there. Now the next step is going to be the subjective metrics of even, how the media covers you, right? The media has not taken me seriously as a candidate. They just aren't. There will be reporters that will repeatedly cover candidates that are polling way lower than me that won't mention me in articles. And I'm not whining about it. I'm kind of laughing about it.
I get it.
But one of the metrics that they use is, all right, how many unique donations do you have, right? Are you actually, it's not just the poll numbers, but people actually parting ways with money. Some of that's actually absolute dollars that people are able to raise. Actually, one program we launched is, I'll lift the curtain on this one, is there's a special class of political fundraisers that get a cut of what they raise, up to 10% of what they raise for you as a bundler or whatever, they get to keep it. Well, my view is, why do I want to pay some member of a cartel to do that when everybody could do it? So we launched this program, the Kitchen Cabinet. Honestly, anybody here who's good at selling a message and raising funds, join that for us. You get to keep 10% of what you raise for us. I say if some political cartel is doing it, might as well open that up to every citizen to be able to do the same thing. That just launched recently. Again, you go to that website, Vivek2024.com, you raise $100,000, you keep $10,000. And people say, oh, isn't that wild? No, actually, that's literally how the system works right now. It's just that a small group of people get to do it. Why shouldn't everybody get to do it?
Right.
And so Biden says 10% for the big guy. I say 10% for the little guy. But let's unleash ourselves in building what is a grassroots snowball effect. So it's how the media covers you. Then the absolute dollars. Right now, we are not on TV. We're not doing TV ads in national or other places. Other candidates are. Actually, I haven't had a podcast like this where I'm talking about the business side of this.
Yeah, that's what I really want, because I want to get into some of that stuff, but I want people to understand
the mechanics,
how on lockdown this is, because I think the voter, the little guy, me, understand competition, understand being suppressed, understand how rigged the system is, whether
it is rigged.
You're trying to get a bank loan, you're trying to get a checking account, you're trying to get a savings account, you're trying to get 5% interest rather than 0.5%. We understand how stacked the deck is, whether you're white, brown, or black, male or female. And so when I think what we don't understand is how rigged the political system is.
It is.
And you now see that from because of what you're doing.
Yeah, so the way it works is you've got these professional mercenaries who are like the political consultant class and the fundraiser class. Candidates are like commodities. They come and go. and they're a little less shiny toy, but these people continue to make money off of that system. It is an industry. It is a massive, ugly underbelly of an industry. More people will make money off this 2024 presidential election than any election in human history. Many of them are trying to make money off of me, okay? So I see how this game's played. And then they have their friends in the media. So a lot of these reporters, it's a funny story the other day, on Sunday, a reporter from a major newspaper, he calls me, he says, he's literally reading off of the bullet points of something that was handed over to him by a super PAC consultant about quotes from my books that they're trying to play gotcha on. And then he's like, I'm like, I don't remember writing that. And then I'm opening my book. I'm like, it doesn't say this in there. I'm in the middle of the interview. I was like, where does it say this in the book? And then he was fumbling over. I was like, wait a minute. Then I was like, do you even have the book that you're asking me? He's like, no. Have you opened it? I was like, no. So you're literally just reading off a memo at some deadline that you have to publish a story, which is really just fed to you by a guy who's a repeat player in the political consulting class. It doesn't even come from the other candidates, right? The other candidates are just puppets. It's their super PACs and their consultants that are driving all of this. And so I refuse to play that game. And that's why they dislike me, right? Their whole game in the media right now is don't even attack this guy. Right now, just ignore him and hopefully it goes away.
Meaning you.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And that's what they tried to do to Trump in 2015. And it's like you introduce an outsider, like an antigen to a body. It has an immune response. That's kind of what's happening now is first you ignore it, then you criticize it, and then you lose. And that's exactly how that's the way the plot went in 2016. I think it's the way it's going to go this time.
So at what point, though, do you have to embrace, because what's it going to take to run? I mean, what's going to be spent in totality on
$2 billion.
On this?
The winner of this election is going to have to spend $2 billion.
The winner spends $2 billion.
Yeah.
In totality, so you're talking about $10 to $12 billion.
Billions. I mean, it goes down a lot after the two for the next, but it'll be billions of dollars. Didn't they spend
$7 billion in Michigan on the Senate race?
Unbelievable. Yeah. I mean, a couple of these other races, and it's an industry because the leeches in the middle make a lot of the money. So my view is I'm calling that bluff, and I say anybody out there, you want to make money and just do the same thing the political cartel is doing. Go to Vivek2024.com, sign up for the kitchen cabinet. There's a standard legal process and everything you go through. And then you raise money, keep 10% of what you raise. They hate me for this because it breaks up their cartel.
Right.
And these are the guys who actually wield the power even more than the candidates. And there's an analogy to the federal government here, right? Because then the myth in the federal government is it's the president of the United States who actually runs the show, that it's the Biden decisions that are holding this country back. It's not, guys. That too is just a farce. He's just a puppet that sits on top of a machine that was there long before he arrived and that will be there long after he's gone. And to tell you the truth, if I'm the nominee, and I'm expecting to be the nominee, but if I'm the nominee, that machine isn't even going to let him run, right? Because they know I would blow him out in a landslide. That's why they're keeping the documents case lording over his head, right? Or they're keeping a lot of the other stuff that they're not dropping on him now. That hammer will drop if a guy like me is the nominee. Then they put up a new puppet, whip out the next puppet, the Michelle Obama or the Gavin Newsom. So that's just how this game is played, is even in the government, the people who we think we elect to run the government, like the U.S. president, are not the people who actually run the government. It's, again, that managerial class. Just like in the campaign, as I'm seeing now, it's the political consultant machinery, the super PAC machinery that runs the show, and the candidate's just a little toy and the puppet who sits on top. It's a farce. It's a game.
So, Vivek, who are these people then? Like it's 100 people.
Yeah, it's the same. It's just the donors in the managerial class broadly who's funded by them. So it's the same kinds of people who become the assistant secretary, undersecretary of God knows what, or an ambassador to some second-tier nation, that then become the associate dean of whatever at a university, that then gain a professional seat on 3 corporate boards, getting paid, mid-6 figures for showing up at 3 board meetings a year. It's the managerial class, and that's the real divide in this country right now. It is not between earnest Republicans and Democrats who disagree on policy. It is between the managerial class and the citizen. It is the Great Reset versus the Great Uprising. I stand on the side of the Great Uprising. I think Bobby Kennedy Jr. probably stands on the side of the Great Uprising, right? It's not a Republican versus Democrat thing. It is the managerial class versus the citizen. And I think this is the 1776 question, because I go back to when I said it's a 1775 moment right now. Yeah. There's electricity in the air. this is the moment we live in. We live in a unique time. We shouldn't be frustrated or upset about this. I think we should be encouraged, actually. We live in a unique moment in history. Now, will we buckle and stick to some sort of partisan divide about tax rates and say we're on the side of the Republicans and we favor reform? I think reform is a false promise. Many people who make that promise don't even know it's a false promise, but it's a false promise. Do you want reform or do you want revolution? That's the question we face right now.
And when you
And
say
I stand on the side of
revolution,
revolution.
yeah, when you say revolution, like I immediately think violence, right?
No,
So
no, I do not mean violence. I think a revolution as in the ideals of the American Revolution, right? I do not think this has to end in the way that, wait another 20 years, that might be where we are, right? I think this is our window to get it right by people standing up through knowledge, through speech, through unapologetic speech without fear. So this is the moment where we exercise those free speech rights without apology. This is the moment where we actually stand up for those 1776 ideals. Take some personal risk. Maybe you take a risk of losing your job. Maybe. To be very honest with you, you may take the risk of your internet accounts being locked. Maybe. You may take the risk of being debanked. These are the risks we take, but we can make a sacrifice if we know what we are sacrificing for. And that is this thing we call America. So I want to be very clear about this. I stand on the side of peace because you tell people they cannot speak, that is when they scream. If you tell people they cannot scream, that is when they tear things down. That is what gave us January 6th. I don't want to see that happen again. And so I want to be very clear about that. But I think we live in a unique moment where we reject the managerial class and the everyday citizen. It's the great reset on the one side. It's the great uprising on the other. And I stand on the side of the great uprising, and I think the way we do it is by exercising to the fullest our legal constitutional rights, which too many people are afraid to do today.
So, okay. So, and part of that would be to go to support you. Obviously, I don't know how to support other candidates. I know they all want money. I had a guy in here the other day. I had Christian from the Florida. What's Christian's last name, Andy? You remember? You probably know him. He runs the GOP Florida, the entire state. Young guy.
Okay, I think I might have met him once. Yep.
And I said, dude, what's it cost to run for governor of the state of Florida? He said $130 million.
It's nuts. It's nuts. I mean, this thing should not be an industry the way it is. It makes me mad. Honestly, people volunteering would be amazing too, right? I think volunteers are powerful if they're actually invested in the cause. So, I mean, you go to that same website, you sign up. Absolutely. We will use volunteers to spread this message. And that's not, in my case, it's not talking about me because this isn't about me.
Yeah.
It's talking about our actual message of truth. Spread the truth. There are two genders. Fossil fuels are a requirement for human prosperity. Reverse racism is racism. An open border is not a border. Parents determine the education of their kids. Capitalism lifts people up. Spread these messages across our country. Our Constitution is the strongest guarantor of freedom in human history, and we will stand up for it, and we will fight for it, and we will not bend the knee. I'm a vehicle, right? I'm volunteering to be your instrument, our instrument to get this done. That's the way I see my role in this.
That's exciting, man.
That's the way we do this.
Yeah. So let's just take some of these issues that you brought up. Okay.
Sure.
And I saw the X. I don't think I'm supposed to call them tweets anymore. They're X's, let's talk about reverse racism. Okay. I have a huge audience of people that don't look like me that follow me. Some of them like me, some of them don't. I never say it right way. If I took on this reverse racism thing, that there's no such thing as racism. If you're Black, you cannot be a racist. Like it would go nuclear. What are you saying to me? That Black?
I'm saying that anybody can be racist. I've experienced it. I've experienced racism in my life. Look, first thing I want to say is we need to take this construct that just because you experience racism, your life is ruined. I stub my toe. I don't let it ruin my day. Okay. We all stub our toe. It's like, okay, has somebody said some racist things to me in the past? Yes. Do I let it ruin my life or even my day? No, I don't. And I think, by the way, it's a lot different today than even it was in the 1990s when I was growing up in Southwest Ohio, a little bit different in the year 2023. Good. Things change. Move forward. but I've experienced racism. It's come from white people. It's come from black people.
Mhm.
I probably have experienced more racism from black people than I have from white people in my life. I think it might make some people upset to hear that, but it's my experience, right? And I'm speaking the truth. And I think black people have experienced racism from Indian American people and from white people and whatever too. But what I believe is that we should live in a country where we don't judge each other on the color of our skin, but on the content of our
But
character.
Beck, you would
I
agree
believe in
that
it.
you would agree that it's still harder for black or browns to get a loan, to earn interest even on a savings account, like a fair.
It is, and I'll tell you why it is.
Yeah.
Economic disparities. I'll tell you where those economic disparities begin, with a broken educational system, which traps kids in the school districts where they're born. That is the civil rights issue of our time, right? Young kids are trapped by their zip code. It's like a modern ghetto system when it comes to education. The public schools that are spending the most per student are the ones with the poorest results. So I favor school choice on steroids. Put money into those parents' hands, dissolve the Department of Education, empower them to send their kids to the best schools. Oh, and by the way, take some of that money from the public school with them, put it in the kid's account. On our plan, that kid graduates with a $250,000 graduation gift when he graduates from high school just by starving the teachers' union-laden bureaucracy. You tell me what's a better use of money. Then it goes upstream of education to the family. You know what? If you grow up in a single-parent household, I don't care what your skin color is. You're 8 times more likely to end up in jail. You are 8 times more likely to be a drug user, more likely to end up in poverty, less likely to graduate from high school. So now let's take the colorblind.
If what happens?
If you're in a single parent household.
Yeah,
if you grew up in a single parent household.
Every stat just goes off the charts.
Off the charts, right? So then let's try this filter on.
How do you solve that? How do you solve that? Like I was raised by a single mom.
Yes. So and by the way, I want to be the first to say this. There are many people who succeed despite that, and that's a great thing. But that doesn't mean that's what we should wish for everyone.
That's right.
And so here's an answer. I visited the south side of Chicago. I went to Kensington, the inner city of Philadelphia. These are places where Republican candidates don't go. There are women in those communities who are paid more money not to have a man in the house than to have the man in the house. So the federal government should not create an incentive structure. I don't blame the families. I blame a federal government that creates bad incentives for these people. People get paid, in many cases, more money not to go to work than to go to work. That's a bad incentive. You're talking about Kensington. People get paid free crack pipes and free needles through the so-called aid programs instead of having a path off of drugs like heroin. So I think we do have a bad habit in this country of paying people to do the exact opposite of what we should want them to do, what's best for them. And so these are solvable problems. So I don't blame, people say, are you blaming the victim here? No, I'm not actually. But I think that if you just take that statistic on fatherlessness or single-parent households, the facile explanation for saying, okay, black and Hispanic people are behind on economic or educational achievement results, that's true. But blaming that on racism today is, I think, a lazy explanation, because here's a different prism. Whether you're black, white, brown, Asian, if you grew up in a single-parent household, that's exactly the outcomes you'd reach. And then you just look at disparities in single-parent households. It's like 45% of black kids versus 9% of Asian kids, or less than 9% of Asian kids. Okay, that explains the difference in results. And so we should want to fix that for all kids, regardless of their skin color.
But how do you fix it? How do you keep that man from leaving?
Yeah. So part of this can't be fixed by the government.
Yeah.
You got to be really honest about that. The government can stop subsidizing it, which is what we're doing today. I think the school educational system is a big part of this too. You allow those parents, either dual parent or single parent, to send their kids still to the best school they can. They can't do that today. They're stuck in the awful school where it reinforces the same culture. So the government can't fix everything. I think we got to be really careful about falling into that trap. We don't want the federal government fixing everything. But the federal government can get out of the way and can actually empower people to make their own choices in a way that they're not economically empowered to do today. The rest of it's going to have to come from culture, frankly. People like you, pastors, coaches, teachers. The national revival is going to require everyone to do their part. And so even if you guys vote for me and support me and I'm your next president, I'm not letting you off the hook that easy, right? You're not done. I still need you to we each have to play our roles, but there is a role for the president to play. It's not more important than everybody else's. It's just another role. And that's the role I'm volunteering to play, to at least fix the bad policies and set a sort of national character of example that reaches the next generation. And dare I say, I hope inspire them and bring them along with us. That's the way I think about it.
Look, so much of this I agree with. Kill the FDA, get rid of the FBI. We can handle the truth. I think the American people deserve to know the truth. Like so many, but when you say like the single mom in Kensington, okay, are you saying she's being rewarded right now to manage the 3 kids without bringing the husband back? Or
what I'm saying is you actually get more payment if you actually have that single parent household rather than a man who's in the house but not earning as much as the federal government would give you instead. So there are many people in that situation that literally get more aid because of the circumstance they're in, rather than having a working father in the house because of the way the math works, that he might not be bringing enough money to actually make up for it.
So you end the aid, and how does that solve that problem?
Well, I think, first of all, you don't create the incentive structure in the first place. And I think a lot of that came from a cycle of being trapped in those schools. Why is that dad not earning that money despite working hard? It's because he was trapped in a poor educational system that gave him those poor outcomes. So there's no silver bullet, right? It's not that like, oh, taking away the aid is the magic solution. In the short run, without any other solutions, yes, that could actually leave people in an even worse spot. But note the way I talk about it, it's part of a comprehensive vision of also, so combine that with this, right? Take a real family. Imagine now that they now have ability to send their kid to that better school, a private school or charter school. I've been really specific about this elsewhere, so I might as well be here. Let's take the inner city of Philadelphia, right? $35,000 or New York City, $40,000 per student per year. Now you're going to a better school that costs, in many cases, $15,000 to $20,000 per year. Let's say it's $20,000 a year. Okay. Under my vision, you take half the difference, the $40,000 versus the $20,000, that travels with the family. So that family, it just goes into an account for that family. You starve the bureaucracy that way in the public school. You compound that.
Meaning the education department.
Well, first of all, the step one is the federal education department that spends $80 billion. You shut it down. That gives people the equivalent of the voucher to choose the better school. So that's step one. But I'm going one step further, which is to say that when they leave the bad school, right, the school that's spending $40,000 a year, and by the way, the worst schools are the ones that, in terms of achievement, are the ones that spend the most money. When they leave that school, not only are they leaving that school because they have actual school choice to be able to do it, an educational voucher or equivalent to do it. When they leave, they now can take cash with them. The difference between the $40,000 and the $20,000, they get to take half the difference, $10,000 with them, and put it in the kid's account. That's an investment account. When that kid graduates from 12th grade, if that's just invested even normally, that's $250,000 in that kid's account when he graduates from 12th grade. Right? That's a good graduation gift. Imagine you growing up in the inner city, you got to not only go to a better school, but you actually have a $250,000 graduation gift when you graduate. It's not even close what's a better use of money. The reason we don't have it is the teachers' unions are dead set opposed to it because that is the bureaucracy that we need to starve. And so to me, this is where a lot of the wokeness in schools come from, is they'll say, oh, no, math is racist. 2 + 2 = 4, that's math. No, that's not racist. But what might be racist or inequitable is failing to teach a bunch of poor black kids how to do math, or to keep them home for an entire year, where a bunch of kids who went to those charter schools and private schools during the pandemic still got a full year of school. We're never going to fix that inequity. And so they blow what I call woke smoke to deflect accountability for their own failures. And so I'm calling that bluff, but I want to do it not just to name and shame people, but because there's actual solutions we can bring to the table to deliver that economic empowerment. Not all of this is going to be done by the government. Some of this is cultural, and I think that hurts to talk about. I think we've got to speak about the hard truth. We've got to fix certain failing cultures in our inner cities as well. A culture of victimhood, a psychological culture of failure. That's part of this too. And that's not just the U.S. president's job, though the president can be a national symbol of character, but it's going to require cultural leaders in other spheres of our lives, parents, teachers, coaches, people who provide inspiration through film, the way movies portray people. All of this is going to be an element of our national cultural revival, but the president has a role to play, and that's the role I'm looking to play.
Yeah. Would you support ending these bad schools, like terminating their funding and teachers working there? Like if they don't.
Yes.
Yes.
Meritocracy.
Do we have enough schools in the country to support the students that want to go to the good schools?
Yes, we do, actually. And the trap that we've created now is, just look at what happened in Pennsylvania recently. You had a Democratic governor, Josh Shapiro, who pledged going in. And so here was the situation in Pennsylvania. They had excess cash lying around, like literally excess money from COVID aid during the COVID pandemic. And he said, we're going to use that $100 million to turn it over to give people school choice. So they're not taking away budgets from the public schools. They're literally just giving poorer families, it's poor families here we're talking about, the ability to opt out. The teachers' unions lobbied so hard to prevent them from even using that extra money. So it wasn't even money they're taking from the public schools, but it's excess money lying around, observing that there's plenty of other schools that have excess enrollment capacity, just giving families the ability to show up and actually go there. The unions got in the way of even that. And so that's how broken and rigged the system really is. Because you think about it, why do private sector unions, at least why is there a more colorable argument for that? It's you got the shareholders on one side and the CEO represents the shareholders, and then you got the unions representing the workers, and they're engaging in a negotiation. Here, nobody's actually representing the citizens and the taxpayers.
Right.
Because the guy who got elected, who's supposed to be representing them, only got elected because of the unions that actually contributed enough money to put him up there, that's then now negotiating with the unions on the other side. So you have the same party negotiating on both sides. It's rigged. And you know who suffers as a consequence? It's the kids and the families, especially poor kids and poor families as a result.
Can the president influence the curriculums at the state levels?
Only indirectly. And I'm a 10th Amendment absolutist, right? So I believe it's going to require good governors. The indirect way is to stop the influence that they're already having. So what the U.S. Department of Education does is they spend $80 billion a year, and they say you only get that money as a public school if you adopt these toxic racial and gender ideologies. And that's why the public schools do it. So many people think it's the school boards, and some of this does come from bad school boards, and I'm so grateful for parents who get engaged. But many of those school boards are really just responding.
Qualifying for funding.
To the incentives that were created for them. Exactly. So you kill the head of the snake. That's the U.S. Department of Education. Shut it down. That's a big part of how you influence it indirectly, is by stopping the toxic influence they already have.
Whoever's receiving the 80 billion is going to resist that.
Yes, exactly right. I mean, this is the deep state. This is exactly what we talk about. And this is where I'm a little different than Trump. I'm not blaming him. I think he was an excellent president, actually, to be clear. I'm learning from the foundation that he laid. Mm-hmm. He put Betsy DeVos on top, a good person. She's a friend.
You're good. I like the way you walk the lines, bro.
I'm just speaking truth. I mean, I really love the guy. I voted for him, right? I mean, he was an excellent president, right? So I'm not going to sit here and bash a guy who was probably the greatest president we've had in the 21st century. Him winning in 2016 was the single greatest thing that happened for this country to stop the inevitable Marxist march through our government and our institutions. So I'm grateful for that. Mm-hmm. But here's what I learned from it is he put Betsy DeVos on top and said, reform the Department of Education. It didn't happen. They're spending more money than ever because you cannot tame that beast, but you can slay it.
Yeah, you can kill it.
You can shut it down. Exactly. Mm-hmm. That is the right answer. And that comes back to that question. Do we want reform or do we want revolution? I respect the people who stand on the side of reform. But if you stand on the side of the American Revolution, the 1776 ideals, then we're on the same team. And that's not going to come from somebody who's come from within the political establishment. It's not going to come from somebody who grew up within the system. It is going to take an outsider who's not beholden to anybody, but also an outsider who has a firmly rooted conviction in the laws and in the Constitution. And that's a pretty rare combination, right? I mean, I went to law school. I've written 3 books, written constitutional law articles and otherwise. They're quoted by judges in federal cases in the last 2 years on one hand. But I'm not just an academic, right? I've been a CEO. I've built multi-billion-dollar businesses, created thousands of jobs in this country. That's what calls me into this, is I think it takes both of those things right now to get this job done. And I think we all have to look ourselves in the mirror and ask ourselves, how are we going to do our duty in playing our small part in reviving this country And as ridiculous as it might have sounded for a 37-year-old outsider guy like me to say it, I honestly believe it, especially when I think about reaching the next generation, reviving national pride amongst young Americans.
Dude,
I honestly think I'm
I
the
gotta
best
tell you,
person
man,
to do it.
your pitch is strong, bro.
I
You got a
appreciate it, man.
strong. No, I'm serious. Like, it's hard to listen to you and not be. You're very charismatic. You extremely convincing, right?
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. And I'm just
And,
here's the other thing I will say though. I want to be honest about this
yeah,
in respecting, every audience and every voter out there. My job in this is I just want you all to know who I am and what I stand for. All right, if everybody in this country knows that and then say this isn't what they want, I'm good with that.
yeah,
Right? I'm fine with that. I put my head on my pillow at night and sleep peacefully. But the system is so rigged and broken that it
yeah,
is designed to stop you from knowing that. Right. And so that's why I appreciate conversations like this one.
yeah.
We
Well,
take questions from the people online, everything else. That's
yeah,
good. Right. We
yeah.
need more of that because the rest of it is designed to be filtered and rigged to stop you from knowing me or the other candidates in this race. It's all distorted. And if we can cut through that distortion and people don't want what I have to offer, they want reform of a different kind rather than, the revolution that I stand for, fine. I'm cool with that. But I'm going to tell you what I stand for. And
Yeah.
if you guys put me there, that's what I'll get done.
And I think people are ready for a revolution. I think, this education thing, we took our kids out of schools 5 years ago, 6 years ago. They immediately improved by not being around the other kids and frankly, the parents and the confusion.
How old are they, if you don't mind me asking?
They're 12 and 14 now.
Okay.
So they've been out of the system for 6 years. My family said, "Oh, they're not going to be socialized." I'm like, exactly. I don't want them
into the
around
nonsense. Yeah.
There's so much confusion. There's so much confusion in our system. Like,
So my older son's 3.5 now, and we're seriously, if you asked me before we had kids, would I have considered homeschooling? I would say no way. And yet that's exactly the option we're considering right now.
the best thing we
serious.
did, the best thing we did for our family was to homeschool our kids. It was better for our family
Yeah.
unit. Now, unfortunately, there's no government aid to support that. But
I think that should be part of the school choice program, right? You
Yeah.
bring that out, take that money with you, put in the educational account of the kid. He gets to go to great college with some money to spare with that $250,000 I talked about.
it's brilliant.
But in the meantime, that should actually support parents who need to make that choice.
Talk to me about, because there's a lot of other things that you're taking on. I wish I had more time with you.
Yeah, we got to, unfortunately, time's flown by. We got to rock and roll soon, but I'm.
Yeah. So
yeah.
FBI, you want to eliminate the FBI?
Yes, I do.
Uh-huh.
You want me to talk about the details of that a little bit?
Well, FBI, what else you want to kill? The FDA?
FBI, CDC, IRS, ATF, Department of Education, Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and we're just getting warmed up. That's the answer. And for me, these aren't slogans, right? I'll just give you one example on the FBI.
Andy, send him another $100, okay? Yeah, guys, it's Vivek2024.com, Vivek2024.com, VIVECK.
No, VIVEK. VIVEK.
VIVEK, sorry. VIVEK2024.com. I just, listen to what he wants to do, man. Like,
I appreciate it.
Like, you guys need to send a message. I'm talking to the listeners right now. You guys have to vote with your pocket. Like, you can't just have ideas. You have to fund them. Okay. How much money did you spend? You spent 15 million of your own money.
Over 15. Yeah.
How many interviews are you doing a day? 5, 6, 7?
Yeah. I mean, easily, including town halls and everything else. I mean, I work from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. usually, most days,
Yeah.
7 days a week. Occasionally we'll take a day, a month off, but we're stopping at nothing on this thing. And it lifts me up when the people of this country say this is what they want. I am your instrument. Work through me to get this done. And for me, man, I will tell you, even the FBI shut it down. People say, is that extreme? No. Extreme is the status quo. Let me tell you what's not extreme is having a government that actually represents the will of its people. So I'll give you specifics. There's 35,000 employees in the FBI. 20,000 of them are in back office functions. That's where the political rot comes from. They're going to have to go home and find honest work in the private sector. I'm pragmatic. The 15,000 agents that are on the front line, many of them good people, most of them good people, we'll move them to more specific agencies that haven't been polluted, like the U.S. Marshals, which has been great on child sex trafficking rings. Move them to the DEA, which is investigating some of the same cases the FBI is, the drug cases, but in a separate silo. Move some of them to the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network underneath the U.S. Treasury, which has actual expertise to go after white-collar crime and large-scale theft. So this isn't some sort of political slogan. This is an actual vision of how it's done. We don't need the FBI itself as an institution. That is still the J. Edgar Hoover building that people walk into and report for duty every day. It is built in the shadow of J. Edgar Hoover. We don't need it. But that doesn't mean people are going to suffer. To the contrary, the 15,000 people who really matter, we're moving them to other agencies that haven't been corrupted. So this isn't, some people say, oh, is this extremist or impractical? No, this is far more practical and effective, but also legal and constitutional than what we're actually doing today under the current status quo. So that's the kind of leader I want to be is, yes, idealist in my convictions, but deeply pragmatic in how we actually implement it.
How would you manage the Fed and their, what I believe is their overreach with raising interest rates, crushing the middle class right now? Their ability to even qualify for a mortgage has become impossible at 7.5% interest rates. I know
this is such a good question. I should probably rock and roll soon, but this is such a good question. Let me just take this at one too. So here's the deal. The Fed has been for 25 years trying to hit two targets with one arrow, and they've been missing on both, inflation and unemployment. The reality is the Fed shouldn't be doing any of this, playing financial God from on high. They should be focused on one job: stabilize the U.S. dollar as a unit of measurement, period, against gold, silver, nickel, agricultural and farm commodities. That's it. Stabilize the dollar. It actually means something against goods of real value, commodities of real value. That's it. I don't need then 23,000 employees, which is how many work in that system today. I need less than 10% of that. So what are we doing? 90% headcount reduction at the U.S. Federal Reserve. Single mandate, stabilize the dollar. And this reveals part of the problem, actually, because when you have a bunch of people who show up to work who shouldn't have had that job in the first place, it's not just their headcount costs that are the problem.
Yeah.
It's that they find things to do that actually are far more destructive than just having not existed in that bureaucracy in the first place. Plus, we'll save the headcount costs too. That's the way I think about it. And it gives you a sense for how I look at, the FDA and the SEC and otherwise in a very similar light.
You said that, and I know you're running out of time, but Wuhan, you would want to know where COVID came from. How
I believe we now know where it came from. And now we finally do. 3 years later, I could have told you that in mid-2020.
Yeah.
But now we need to know the circumstances under which it was released. I believe there's a reasonable likelihood that there was some intentionality to it. I do. I think that China's intentionally flooding Mexican drug cartels south of our own southern border with synthetic materials that create fentanyl south of our own southern border, with Chinese chemists who live south of our own southern border, pumping fentanyl into our country across the southern border. It's happening every day. Now, here's the deeper questions we have to ask, right? If there was some intentionality to the COVID-19 pandemic, if they are intentionally, as they absolutely are, sending raw materials for synthetic fentanyl south of our own southern border, and then they're responsible for 90% or, maybe it's 80% of our pharmaceutical supply chain for many classes of drugs, who's to say that they won't lace that with the same fentanyl that they're lacing Percocet with that's crossing our southern border? Now, that sounds like the stuff of crazy conspiracy theories. But actually, if you're thinking about it logically, based on the truth, it's not that unthinkable if we escalate our tension with China. And I think that they're the ones escalating the tension with the Chinese spy balloons flying over half our United States. So these are the questions we have to grapple with. And these are not easy questions to grapple with. They're ugly. They're hard. But we, as I said at the beginning, we can handle the truth. There is no such thing as a noble lie. And I think we live in a moment where the people who lead the government and the managerial class in the universities and in corporate America and in the federal bureaucracies, they believe the public can't handle the truth. If we believe we can handle the truth, some of it might be ugly. Some of it might be uncomfortable, but the first step is just telling the truth again. That is how we move forward as a country. That is why I'm going to Nashville tomorrow. I'm going to demand the release of the shooter's manifesto that the FBI and the police committed to.
What do you believe that manifesto will say?
I genuinely don't know. I genuinely don't know. I think that the default assumption was that it was a transgender individual who harbored some animus to commit a hate crime against a Christian school. But I don't know, actually.
Yeah.
And I think that this is part of the problem is we start making up our own theories. That'd be my best guess right now. But if we don't want something like that to happen again, you can virtue signal and talk about some anti-gun law. That's the wrong way to deal with this.
Yeah.
We have a mental health epidemic. We can handle the truth. Somebody wrote something down in a notebook. The tradition of the police is they release it.
Exactly.
Release it to the public. And I understand there's a consideration where it may be painful to the victims and their families. We have to do it with decency and respect for those families. But we, the public, we have to know the truth.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to restore in the government. If I do one thing, it is restoring truth.
Man, I really appreciate your time today. Just quickly, Ukraine, end it or let it go? End it.
End it. End it. And you keep asking me these good questions.
Would you exonerate Trump?
What do you mean by pardon him?
I mean, if he, yeah, would you pardon him?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I've said that. I was the first person to say it. In fact, and I've written on the pages of the Wall Street Journal, here's the exact legal argument for why in both of those cases.
Should they be pursuing him the way they are?
No, absolutely not. This is a dangerous precedent in the United States.
Do you think the last election was rigged?
By big tech? Yes, it was. The Hunter Biden laptop story, if that had been allowed to be shared, Donald Trump would be the current president of the United States, no doubt about it.
Where do you stand on abortion?
Pro-life, without apology. And I think that I picked that up at St. X High School in Cincinnati. And I actually think more people are pro-life in this country than are willing to admit it. That's the other thing I will say.
Yeah.
And I have found that. And so I don't think this has to be this divisive issue we've made it out to be.
Hey, look, when you're down in Miami, I'd love to support you down here and get my friends. I got a big audience and love to bring my friends out and have them listen to you. And anything I can do to help and support your staff. I love your message. I believe in it. Guys, it's Vivek2024.com, Vivek2024.com. Any last words, my friend? I really appreciate your time.
I appreciate it. I'm going to have my team reach you. We might even be there this Friday. So that might be a little short, but
we have 1,800 women. My wife is speaking to, I don't know, 1,500, 1,800 women, 800 women this at the Turnberry Friday and Saturday. So if you want to come in and say hi to them.
Okay.
They're all voters.
I would love that. Let's talk offline on the team. The thing I'll say in closing is that we have been taught to believe that our diversity is our strength. Our diversity is not our strength. Our strength is what unites us across our diversity. E pluribus unum means from many, one. And I believe those ideals still exist in our country. I believe most of us share them in common. I believe we still have a window to work with where we together can revive them. 20 years from now, the ball game's over. But I think this is our last best chance to still revive those ideals of the American Revolution, revive that one nation under God. And if you guys do your part, I promise you I will do mine.
Annie, send Vivek some more money, all right? Vivek2024.com,
I appreciate you, brother.
guys, Vivek2024.com.
Thank you, man.
Hey, appreciate your time. Love to do this again. We have a big audience right now on X, so that was
all of you guys listening. Your support means a lot to me. I do not take that lightly. It lifts me up. And it will lift this campaign up. So thank you, guys.
Appreciate you, man.
Thank you.